It was a late summer evening in a small military operations base, located deep in the rugged hills of Montana. The sun was dipping below the horizon, casting long shadows over the dusty roads that wound through the barren landscape. The base was small, quiet, and not often visited by outsiders. It was the kind of place that lived in the shadows of the military, an unassuming outpost, where soldiers came and went, often unnoticed. But tonight, things were about to change. Sergeant Lucas Luke Daniels had just finished a grueling day of training with a small unit of Special Forces soldiers. The mission had been straightforward: clear out a stretch of land from potential threats. Nothing too dangerous, but always a chance to learn something new. As Luke made his way to the mess hall to grab a quick meal, his thoughts were interrupted by the deep rumble of engines in the distance. He paused, looking over his shoulder. A group of bikers was approaching the base. Their Harleys growled like angry beasts as they cruised down the road, kicking up a cloud of dust in their wake. Luke's brows furrowed. It wasn't common to see civilians around here, especially not on motorcycles. The men on the bikes weren't the kind to follow rules. They were the type that lived outside the law, the kind that liked to stir up trouble wherever they went. The lead biker, a man with a thick beard and a skull tattoo on his neck, waved as they rolled past the base's front gate. They were on their way to the nearby bar, a small town hangout, and they had no intention of stopping at the base. But something about their appearance rubbed Luke the wrong way. Maybe it was the look in their eyes that suggested trouble was inevitable. Inside the mess hall, Luke sat at a corner table with his meal. His fellow soldiers chatted and laughed, but Luke was always a little different: quiet, focused, always observing. He could tell when things were about to go sideways. He was used to being in hostile situations, but there was something about these bikers that felt off. His instincts told him to be ready. The bikers, having parked their motorcycles in front of the bar, quickly made their way inside, grabbing a few beers and causing a scene. They weren't known for being particularly friendly with the locals. The bartender, an older man named Joe, had seen his fair share of trouble, but this was different. These bikers weren't here to just have a good time. They were here to stir up chaos, to remind people that they could get away with anything. Joe tried to keep the peace, offering them drinks and polite conversation, but it quickly turned sour. The bikers, sensing weakness, began to get more aggressive. One of them, a tall man with a snake tattoo on his forearm, bumped into an older man sitting at the bar. The older man muttered an apology, but the biker wasn't having it. With a sneer, he shoved the older man to the ground. That was when things escalated. Luke was still in the mess hall, finishing his meal, when he heard the commotion from the bar. He stood up, his instincts kicking in. The soldiers in the room could feel the tension building. This wasn't just a scuffle. It was about to turn into something far worse. Without a word, Luke walked to the door of the mess hall, stepping outside into the cool evening air. The bikers' loud voices and laughter echoed through the night, and the sounds of crashing chairs and shouts followed. Luke didn't hesitate. He knew that whatever was happening out there, he would need to handle it. This was his domain, his people. He moved swiftly, approaching the bar with a focused intensity. When he stepped inside, the bikers fell silent. Their eyes shifted to him, sizing him up. He was dressed in his fatigues, his presence alone demanding respect. The tall biker with the snake tattoo sneered at him. "You got a problem, soldier?" he said, his voice dripping with arrogance. Luke didn't flinch. "I suggest you leave now," he said calmly, his voice steady but firm. He had seen this type before, men who thought they could bully their way through life, thinking that their size and intimidation made them invincible. But they hadn't met him yet. The biker laughed, clearly unimpressed. "You think you can just order me around, huh? You think you're the big shot here?" He stepped closer to Luke, pushing his chest against Luke's, but Luke didn't budge. Luke's eyes narrowed, his posture unwavering. "I don't want any trouble, but if you insist on it, you'll regret it." The biker's face twisted into a snarl. "You're the one who's going to regret it, soldier." He reached for the handle of his leather jacket, his fingers brushing the metal of a knife tucked into his waistband. The tension in the room was palpable. The bartender, Joe, backed away, knowing what was coming next. Luke didn't take his eyes off the biker. He knew how to end this without causing a bloodbath. It wasn't about winning a fight, it was about survival. Could draw his knife, Luke made his move. In one fluid motion, he grabbed the biker's wrist, twisted it, and slammed the man's arm against the bar. The biker let out a sharp yelp, dropping the knife to the floor. Luke's other hand was already on the man's throat, holding him down with an iron grip. "You picked the wrong guy to mess with," Luke said, his voice a low growl. The other bikers, seeing their friend subdued so easily, took a step back, unsure of what to do next. "Let him go," one of the other bikers called out, a hint of nervousness creeping into his voice. Luke didn't respond. He was calm, controlled, his training kicking in. "You all need to leave." Now the bikers were hesitating. They didn't know who this man was or what he was capable of, but they could see the fire in his eyes, the sheer willpower that emanated from him. It wasn't the fire of someone looking for a fight, it was the fire of someone who had seen hell and survived. The tall biker with the snake tattoo, realizing that they had underestimated the soldier, held up his hands in defeat. All right, we'll leave," he muttered, and with that he stepped back, signaling the others to follow. Luke released the biker's arm and shoved him backward, sending him stumbling toward the door. The bikers didn't need to be told twice. They made a quick exit, scrambling to their motorcycles and peeling out of the parking lot. The room fell silent. Joe, the bartender, let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. He looked at Luke with a mixture of awe and gratitude. You saved us, son." "I don't know what came over them." Luke nodded, his face unreadable. "It's my job. I protect people." As the bikers disappeared into the night, Luke stood in the doorway, watching the dust settle. The storm had passed, but something inside him had shifted. He knew that sometimes the biggest battles weren't fought on the front lines, they were fought in the streets, in the bars, in places where people thought they could get away with anything. But no one messed with the wrong soldier. That night, Luke went back to his quarters, the hum of the motorcycles still ringing in his ears. He wasn't a hero. He was a soldier. And in his world, that was more than enough.